Welcome to Murphy Bed Depot's panel bed assembly instruction video. Here are the tools you'll need, and here's the basic layout of the first few parts. You see the left and right finished end, the headboard, the toe kick, the top, the valance, and the nailer. First thing you'll need to do is finish drilling out the holes for the spring balance lift mechanism on the left and right finished ends using a 5/16 inch drill bit. And then you'll mount the SBLM to each panel using the provided nuts and bolts. An Allen wrench has been provided to attach these nuts and bolts, and you'll use a 1/2 inch socket attached to your driver on the highest possible setting. You'll want the bolts to embed themselves into the panel to the point where they are flush with the surface of the panel. Once you've finished attaching the SBLM to the panel, you will put the proper number of springs onto the SBLM. With a medium weight mattress for a queen size bed, we typically use 8 springs per side. For a double, we use 6 or 7, and so forth. You'll have to lift the bar just a little bit to get the springs in place and to get them to hook into those holes just right. For best results, you'll want an even number of springs on the top few holes and an even number on the bottom, leaving the middle open. As you see in the video, it's best to hook the springs on the back and then put them into the holes on the arm. And you will want to wear gloves during this process because the springs have a little bit of grease on them, and that will come off of your panels once you're done with your assembly with a little bit of goof off or Windex and a little bit of elbow grease. Once you've got your springs in place, pull the arms so that they're just tight enough to keep the springs in place and to not fall out. Next, you'll put all the cams in the headboard, the nailer, the top, and the valance, as shown here. Make sure that the arrow on your cams is facing the opening on the side of the panel where the pin will come into it. At the foot of the left and right end panels, you'll use the short pins, and all the other pins will be the same size, which typically have a red plastic surround on them. So next you'll put all your pins in place on the side panels and on the top in order to assemble your bed cabinet. This is the nailer here, which goes on to the back of the top. And these are the pins that hold the valance on the front of the top. Once you've got all your pins in place, you put the valance onto the top, making sure that the cams are facing the back. And then place your nailer onto the top and tighten the cams to hold that in place. On both of these, you want your edge banded edges facing down. Stand that up onto one of your side panels. Put it in place. Make sure you hold it while you tighten the cams. Don't forget the cams on the nailer, on the valance, and on the top. Then you put your headboard in place. Make sure to hold it steady while you lower it on. And tighten both of those cams. Next, you'll put the toe kick in place. You slide that onto both of those short pins and tighten it with a smaller number 2 Phillips screwdriver. Make sure that's nice and tight. And then with a helper, you'll lift the other end, put it on top, line it up with all of those. It's easiest to line up the top first since it has the most pins, then the headboard, and then the toe. And you'll want to tighten all of those cams just as you did at the bottom. Double check to make sure that you didn't miss any cams, and then know that none of the panels are loose. Next, with your helper's assistance, you lay it down onto the finished edges and stand it up in place. As you stand it up, you'll want to make sure that those bottom edges are on your blanket or on another padded surface so that it doesn't ruin the bottom edge. And slide it gently into place. And now your panel bed cabinet is standing against your wall. You'll find studs, mark those clearly, and from the top, attach it to at least 3 studs with wood screws or metal stud screws or concrete anchors, depending on your wall construction. This is very, very important that your panel bed is secured very securely to the wall for your safety and use. Next, you'll lay out the contents of the SBF, the steel bed frame box, and the panels that make up your face panel. This may be 4 panels or 8 panels depending on your order. You'll want to line the panels up with one another, making sure the top and bottom are flush, and use some short lengths of blue tape or equivalent to hold them in place so that they don't slide around as you assemble the frame. To assemble the frame, you'll use this provided bolts and nuts and angles. You'll hand tighten them all first, put your frame together, and then using a socket wrench and screwdriver, you'll tighten them in place. Make sure at the foot of the bed, which is the end facing us right now in this video, at the bottom corners on the sides, you'll use a screw through a spacer, then through the side of the frame, and then into a nut. That spacer is going to be the stop as the legs flip around and secure in place while you bring your bed down. So once you've got all 4 corners secured by hand, you'll tighten them with your wrench and your screwdriver. You don't want to over tighten these nylon locking nuts, so set your driver on a mid-range setting. Once your frame is fully assembled and tightened, you're going to begin securing it to your face panels. This is done with a large number of provided wood screws. With a helper, make sure that the top edge is 5/8 inch from the top and that the sides are even, which will be somewhere around 1 inch from each side. Secure 1 screw along the top edge into each of the left and right top panels. Remeasure. And then at the head of the bed, which is the farthest from us at this point, you'll want to do the same. Measure the sides only. The bottom at this point is already fixed. Measure the sides, make sure you're even, and secure into the left and right panels. At that point, you want to make sure that your support members will fit well between the sides of your frame. If you have a flat, smooth surface on your panels, you'll do as they're doing in this video and put one right down the middle. If you have a raised panel door, you'll want to put 2 of these on the edges of your bottom and top panel, making sure they're nice and secure, just to the bottom and above the seam between your upper and lower panels. And then you'll want to put one about halfway between there and the head, just as this one that they're securing now. But you want to be very careful not to screw through the thinner portions of your door. With a flat panel, as these are, you can put screws anywhere in it because the thickness is the same throughout. From here on, with a little bit of patience, you'll secure your panel screws to the frame using a square driver. Next, you want to insert the hardware low to mid-range setting on the sides that is going to secure your frame to the SBLM. In the instructed holes, make sure you have the right bolt through the right hole, secured well with a 1/2-inch socket. You'll put the bottom one, which uses an Allen wrench, in first. Secure the top one only by hand and pull it so that it has a large gap on the outside of the frames, because this will slip into the SBLM when you stand the frame up to put it on to the arm of the SBLM. Next, with a helper, using the provided pipe, pull the SBLM arm and lock it onto the top of the SBLM. Stand up your panel, which will be quite weighty at this point, with a helper, and lift and slide onto the SBLM arm, making sure to lift over the toe kick as to not damage the toe kick or the panels. The middle bolt will now go through, which may require a little bit of coaxing to get through the holes as they line up, now that there is a good amount of weight on these arms. And tighten the middle and top bolts very tight using a 1/2-inch wrench and a 1/2-inch socket. As you can see, it may require a little effort, but this is very important for the safe use of your panel bed. Next, you'll want to assemble the legs. With a plastic washer on the outside, you'll put the leg through the pre-drilled holes in your frame at the foot of the bed, and then using another plastic washer, the large hole metal washer, and then the smaller hole metal washer, secure them in place on a low to mid-range setting with your 1/2-inch driver. Make sure on the inside of the frame that all those washers are pressed securely in place and lined up as you tighten the nut in place. The leg should rotate freely with just a little bit of friction, but not so much that it's difficult to pull around once it's tight. Next, you'll put your leg rod between the two legs with the provided bolts and star washers that lock them in place. It's important not to over tighten these bolts because you may strip out the insert in the leg rod. So by hand, using a 7/16 inch wrench, you'll tighten these securely, being careful not to strip them. It also may help to add a little bit of thread lock to the threads of the bolts on the leg rod. And once you've done that, you're almost done. You just need to unlock the panel from the sides by pulling it forward slightly, letting those levers drop down, and then slowly raising the panel up into place, letting it rest against the top. Then you need to measure, mark, and drill for your handle placement wherever you would like them, making sure that on the back end you're not going to hit the support bar that goes across. So make sure that you know where that is and that you avoid that. You can either drill above and below it, completely above it, or completely below it. It does help to put your handles a little bit on the high end so that you can get your leverage as you pull the bed down towards you. Once you've drilled your holes for your handles or knobs, pull the bed cabinet down a little bit by getting your fingers on that top edge. You may need a helper. Lock it back in place, and then you'll be able to secure the knobs using the screws provided. Once you've got both handles or knobs securely in place, all that's left to do is to make sure your cabinet is square, add your mattress, and invite some guests to sleep on your Murphy Bed Depot panel bed. Enjoy, and congratulations!